do you have a, I'd like to see the City Hall and the Common Council back in regular action, and I'm just curious if there's a number for city employees, a percentage of city employees that have been vaccinated, being that they were one of the first ones to get the opportunity.
We're good. Everybody can see us. And they know who we are. We're talking Racine. We're George Myers. We're Jim Spodek. Yeah. And we're Ken Yorgan. And we're talking masks today. Maskuses.
Where is your mask, Doc?
I got some out in the car.
Yeah. Oh, all right, okay. All right.
You want one?
It's out there with mine, huh?
Hey, I bought a bunch of them early on. You know, I think I paid like $10 for 50 of them or something.
Whoa, boy, you were set up.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm way ahead on toilet paper too.
Still
you know what I'm having trouble with? Lumber.
Yeah,
Still having problems with lumber. But the mask mandate now is lifted in the city of Racine as of Tuesday.
Right.
So how's everybody doing?
It didn't affect me much.
Didn't affect me neither. You know, I go and I put it on as I'm walking in the store, and I take it off as I'm walking out. And
the scientists let me leave mine in the car now.
Yeah,
I'm so happy. The science.
Have you been in touch with the scientists?
The science says that I don't have to wear a mask now, according to science.
Yeah, but you could do it for us.
Yeah.
Well, there was this thing on Ricky Jarstead commented on that today about the facial recognition technology that's being visited upon our city. And somebody brought him to task and said, well, you realize you're on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. And I mean, to really...
You're going to be monitored no matter what you do.
Yeah, and I think citizens have to get a handle on that. You know, I really do. I mean, on you know, your privacy issues. There are privacy issues, and how far are you going to allow us to go? So. Well,
yeah. The other side of that is there's so darn much data collection.
Well,
that they really can't do much with it. I tell you when it becomes dangerous, though, is if they decide they want to get you. Then they can start searching through those files and find out where have you been, what have you been doing, and that type of stuff. So it's got its hazards. In the meantime, as long as you're a good little person and you're behaving and doing everything right, then you don't have to worry about it.
Who was it? Was it Robespierre that said, give me 6 statements from any citizen and I will find enough to convict him? I've always contended you can't walk outside the door in the morning, spend your regular business during the day, without violating some law, some ordinance, something. If somebody wants to get you, you can be gotten.
Yeah, it's really hard to go through a day without, if you're going to include ordinances and stuff like that, man, I mean, just don't turn left from the wrong lane or anything like that. You know, you've just violated something. So
well, we've got a discussion from the city council that you got a tape of, right?
Right. So
this is a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, this is the last Common Council. They had a discussion on the mask ordinance that they lifted, and it's just kind of interesting to hear some of the aldermen and what they had to say about it. So we'll start out in the beginning. They have public comment now on Zoom. So, you know, my thing is, why don't you just open up City Hall and have people come to the chambers and actually address
You know, that is a great question.
You know,
why the heck isn't City Hall open?
Yeah,
you know, you would think of all the places in town, City Hall should be one of the safest to be.
Because they all got their vaccinations, or a whole bunch of got their vaccinations.
They have access to everything. They should be able to control it.
Quit being scared of us. Where, you know, if you're vaccinated.
All right,
you're not going to get infected.
I'll play a little bit. We'll start it out.
All right.
Okay.
3 speakers this evening. The first being Mercedes Ditzenletta. Give me 1 second to start a timer.
All right.
About that, sorry about that. Got to get used to the fact that got all these buttons pushed when I finally am allowed to speak. Anyway, it's nice to see you again. Speak about is the fact that tonight you're going to be talking about the mask issue and the changes. Please make it that everyone continues to have the choice to choose. We should have the freedom to choose. Every letter I've gotten from a health agency has said I have the freedom to choose, but also the freedom to use a mask or not mask. I should not have to be stuck with something on me to say that I am one way or another. That is totalitarian. So please come from love and caring, not from control and fear. Go back to love and caring for all of us, and that we all have the right to health and choose.
Thank you, Mercedes. All right. Yes, that's the way it should have been from the beginning. You had your choice. It was your whether you're going to wear a mask or not, or whether the business should open or stay closed. There was this whole thing of the totalitarian state that Mercedes mentions, and Dottie Bowersox, chief totalitarian in charge, gets to decide who gets to stay in business, who gets to earn a livelihood, who has to stay home, and sulk.
You know, if they would have made it open choice and given a good supportive argument for wearing it, I think a lot of people probably would have worn it anyway.
I totally agree with that. And then we would not have these businesses closing down. We would not have all the problems we got right now with shortages, because they're overshooting now with subsidizing workers for not working because they couldn't work before, but now they're not working, and now the bars and restaurants are ready to open up, and they can't find anybody who wants to come back to work because there's a cut and pay if they go back to work.
You know, one of the things I want to kind of bring up is this maybe a quick change of subject is addressing the Common Council now on Zoom. Now you have Mercedes, who obviously was a regular, almost I believe every Common Council she showed up.
Just about, yeah.
And talked about walking in Racine. And
she was more
issues.
comfortable in the council chambers than she was at home. It seems
I agree.
Like. She got like she was
finally
at home.
figured out Zoom, but why? Now this whole period of time, I'm sure there's other individuals that would rather go out to the chamber and actually sit in there, and actually there's talk that goes on sometimes out in the hallway. Some of the individuals get together and talk about issues that they're concerned about. Why aren't we open? I mean, I just don't understand why we can't have the citizens interact with the council and the employees that are hired by the taxpayer.
City Hall's still closed, and despite the fact that people are supposedly done.
So it's a crime scene. They got to close it down.
Well, we've been talking now with the mayor sneering behind us. Let's see if we can find out why he's sneering.
Mr. Bowersox and Mr. Pierce, you have the floor.
Oh, well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the consideration this evening and the opportunity to once again talk about the COVID pandemic. So with the CDC recommendations of last week, initially the CDC started out by saying that facial masks were not important. They weren't significant, don't worry about them. And then suddenly they changed their mind and they said, nope, we got to have facial masks, that they're important. This is a respiratory virus. This is one of the tools. At the same time, the state of Wisconsin had a mask ordinance, and then they didn't. And then they had a mask ordinance from a statewide perspective, and then they didn't. And then they said, local, do what you can and where you can. And our ordinance was already in effect, again, in July of that year when this happened. We also had the recommendation that we needed to double mask and that we potentially had to triple mask, which was difficult to begin with, but at the same point, that was a recommendation at one time. And then again, last week, Thursday, at 1:12 in the afternoon, unexpected but not surprising, the CDC came out with new recommendations delineating between individuals that are vaccinated and individuals that are unvaccinated.
I kind of want to stop it here.
Why?
Yeah.
She was on a roll with all the changes going.
Yeah.
Did she stop?
Mask, no mask, triple mask, double mask.
But here's the thing.
Good God
when
almighty.
It started out,
that's science?
Well, that's what I mean. And part of
it's
it is
mathematics.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Oh, 1 + 1 is 2. 2 - 1 is.
But it
back to
started
1.
out no
You
mask.
better
And
come up with the right answer on that one, I'll tell you.
if you remember going back to the very early days of this, the Center of Disease Control, had it out there with masks. They really weren't working. They actually had statistics on it. But if you brought it up, all of a sudden we had to have the mask. So don't bring up what they actually claimed before, and that's what she brought up. And then you went through this whole cycle of mask, no mask, triple mask, whatever.
Where's Judge Fredrickson?
It's really more of a deflector. It really doesn't
No, I agree with you. I agree. But the whole thing to me was each one of those, when you really break it down to what happened, politics were in each of them.
That's
It went to
exactly what it
Wisconsin.
is.
Wisconsin said you got to have a mask. Oh, wait a second. Now you don't have a mask because Republicans came in. You don't need a mask. Hebrews, you need a mask. And then it went to the locals where we got to have a mask. They ran up to the appeals court. We got to have all this stuff in place to safe at home.
And some of these things are happening in Washington D.C. They're not even happening
Exactly.
locally. The wrong person came in, and so Tony Fauci said, "Okay, we're no mask."
Now, George, it was the triple mask. I mean, I go to a woman's got like 2-3 masks, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. I'm the conspiracy theorist here.
I wish you had, you probably do, those masks that people were wearing, homemade masks. Remember?
Oh, yeah,
The
yeah.
guy with a 5-gallon bottle that he had carved out shoulder space, and he had
But it
didn't he have
was-
like a screen window or
Yeah,
something.
oh, it's just nuts. What I saw was crazy stuff. But the whole thing, when I heard her say that, and it went through this whole cycle of the mask, each time what I saw was politics were injecting
That's right.
themselves into it.
And what bugs me is businesses were being closed down. People were losing their
affecting
livelihood
lives.
on
Yep.
the basis of that. It's incredible the pain and suffering that was caused through just, mask today, no mask tomorrow. Okay, who knows?
And the other thing is now all of a sudden she said, well, unsurprising. Well, surprising, not really, because Biden's numbers have dropped to the tank. So all of a sudden, whoa, get mask got to go. I mean, this whole thing, this volleyball of politics was injected into this.
You really got to keep the two separate. When you start
Yeah.
mixing science and politics, you're on very dangerous.
And so I just wanted to stop it there to kind of see, this is at least what I could kind of see out of that.
Well, I hope we learned towards this lesson about mixing politics and science. They just don't go together well.
Well,
science should be given to people. The data should be given to people so that they can better use their, do with their life and get around the goals that they want to achieve in life. But it's got to be just on a voluntary basis, like Mercedes was talking about. It can't be on a mandatory basis where you mix it with politics and now we're going to make laws and make you behave according to what we just looked at in the laboratory. That is, if we learn anything from this, that's got to be a lesson we learn, is that you can't mix the two together.
Well, we talked earlier, and sometimes you do, like stop signs. That's based on science.
No, it's not.
Sure
Look,
it is.
no, wait a minute. Now, wait a minute. Let's get this straight. When you're driving a car down the street, you are using science with the car. That doesn't mean you get to take science and do whatever you want. You can still regulate a person based on what they're doing with science, with a gun or with a car, with that type of stuff. I'm talking about when they take it and make you do things according to what science is saying we should do.
Well, when science
if
tells you that there's going to be fewer people dying at an intersection if you make some people stop it when going one direction.
that's fine. And
That's science.
There's a regulatory use where you're using science, but not. But when you're using science
I'm just saying it's not absolute. You can't-
Well, when you see the difference between those two situations, Doc, then you'll understand what I'm saying. But the thing is what they were
I
doing is they
understand
were
what you're
using
saying.
science to close businesses and things like that. No, that's a different thing than putting up speed limits. How you're using the science of your automobile.
still
I
using it.
see here is that
Okay.
you're talking about the Center of Disease Control. This is one of the things that the whole United States looks at, and they regulate drugs and there's supposedly a lot of research that goes in.
Right.
When they come out and they have this kind of a flip-flop, back and forth, there's no confidence in it. So that tells me that, science, no science, it really doesn't matter. I see a political volleyball.
Well, that's
Well,
right.
I see the whole thing was basically a big experiment.
Yeah, and
we
can get into some.
It wasn't really based so much on science as it was a scientific experiment to see.
That's a whole other
might
thing.
help,
Doc.
it
Yeah,
might help,
we could go down some big old rabbit holes with that too,
Yeah.
but we won't go there. But I agree. We can move on. I mean, it's
Well,
Oh, yeah,
there's plenty of Dolly or Dottie.
let's hear some more of Dottie.
So the recommendations at this time are for vaccinated individuals. They can resume activities without any social or physical distancing. They can resume domestic travel, international travel. They don't have to be tested prior or quarantined after. For those that are unvaccinated, precautionary measures, which is to remain with a facial mask, the social distancing, staying home when you're ill. with the exception of outside activities with members of their immediate household, which we've talked about immediate households for a period of time now, and with gathering with fully vaccinated friends and family. Otherwise, again, to don the mask, the social, the physical distancing, the sanitizing of the hands, washing the hands, and staying home when you're ill.
I'm not totally sure what she said there.
Well, I look at it like this is a marketing technique. Now, if you're vaccinated, you can go to the smorgasbord, I guess. Huh? I mean, you can do whatever you want. But if you're unvaccinated, you stay home and wash your hands. See, this is a flip-flop. You know, why? If there's no vaccine, if I don't want to be vaccinated, what?
You're the only one that's risking it.
Yeah.
The people who got the vaccination are not endangered by you. You could contract the disease,
exactly.
and no one's going to get hurt that's been vaccinated because vaccinations prevent you from getting that disease.
Right. So this is the thing. But why is it the unvaccinated are the ones that stay home, don't leave the house, can't travel, can't do all these certain things? So this is what I'm saying. This is what's happening. Marketing plan that's actually being put out there, you know. And we talked about, you know, recycling, you know, that whole thing where it's 7% recycle, but
plastics,
yet it's the petroleum products that are cheaper to make, so it becomes your responsibility to recycle, not for the petroleum industry.
Maybe it wouldn't be cheaper if the people manufacturing the stuff bore some of the responsibility.
Exactly, make it out of corn or something else. The thing is, they were able to market the idea that you recycle, even though I don't have to make it out of corn or wheat or something.
And they lied to us. They said, you know, put it in this basket, and then we'll recycle it.
Right,
But
and
they're not doing
that's
that.
bogus too.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing with this mask. I see the same thing. Now the mask is going to be, well, if you're unvaccinated, you're a danger to society. So you've got to, you know, get vaccinated, and you've got to, you know, you're almost a second-class citizen. Now you can see it being played out here, and not just in Racine. I see it, you know, in a bigger format.
But
now,
she is presenting it as an advisory. It's not. It's no longer a mandate. So
Well,
I'm sure.
if it is an advisory, then we're on good ground, because that should be just an advisory. This is what we say.
And what you're saying is that it should have been advisory from the beginning.
Right, exactly. They had no business. And the problem was, what happened is that big businesses greatly enhanced their profits through these regulations that only affected small businesses. And that's the danger of letting politics get into it. It just starts screwing up people's lives. People are losing their businesses, losing their livelihood, losing their dream, because somebody thinks
Because they can't afford to buy a congressman.
that type of thing. And somebody's saying, yeah, but it's just dangerous for you to open up. Well, how do you know it's dangerous? You know, you haven't got the evidence really to do that type of thing.
Home Depot, which has been huge profits, versus the little local hardware store or the restaurant here. We got to close you down. But Home Depot made huge profits. Yeah. I mean, that's just it. That's part of this whole political movement.
Yeah, and remember that the liquor stores could all stay open because that was necessary.
It was an essential.
It is necessary.
It's an essential.
Yeah, it is essential.
For the grocery store, they could close you. A restaurant, they could close you down.
You ain't closing off my ethanol supply, buddy.
I mean, it gets really ridiculous, and that's why you can advise people. That's a different analogy. I'm still working on my argument with Doc here. You can tell people that here's what you can do with an automobile. You can go on nice drives, you can get places faster and all that type of stuff. But you cannot force people to drive an automobile because they have to get there faster. All I'm saying is you can only advise them to get the automobile, because here's the advantages to it, here's here's the way they work and everything, but we're going to regulate it. You can only go so fast. And it's the same thing with this disease thing. Yeah, you can advise them. You can say, here's what it is. Now you can take these masks and you can go to the store with them, and we recommend that you wear them when you go to the store. And here's your vaccinations, blah de blah. Give them all the recommendations, but you can't force them to do it anymore. You can force a person to buy a car because it gets you there faster and safer than walking.
All right, let's go on.
was, okay, first, Black and brown communities got slapped with the virus because they were exposed and vulnerable, because they were in the vulnerable positions. They couldn't get away from work. They couldn't work from home. So get hit once. Now on the back end, we're going to center our response on white vaccination rates, really, which is who the majority of folks who've been vaccinated now, and then get hit on the back end of when it spreads again, it's only going to spread through those same communities who aren't vaccinated at the same rate. So, I mean, logically, how do we actually see this playing out other than a bookend of Black and brown communities getting slapped by this virus, both on the front and the back? That's a serious concern for me.
Patty Kay?
Yes, I understand. Yes, thank you, Mary. Good question, Alder. Thank you. So right now, for those that are vaccinated within the African American community, we're about 17%, 17.3%. For the Hispanic community, we're at about 34.7%, and that includes first those that are fully vaccinated and those that have had one dose. So yes, you are correct, and that's why we're doing the outreach efforts within those communities.
Well, I understand the history of medicine and the black population. If I was black, I'd probably have hesitance too. I mean, there's
What's this
reason
history?
to be concerned. Well, you don't remember the Tuskegee experiments where they were testing black males who had syphilis, and they were telling them they were being treated, but they weren't treating them. They were just monitoring the progression of the disease.
Okay.
And black women, a lot of black women were sterilized without their consent. So there are historical things.
Is that why there's only 17% of black people getting?
I'm saying I can understand the hesitancy in the black community because there's a bad history between medical and the black community.
Well, the same thing is going on in other communities too, because I know there's a lot of Hispanic people and there's a lot of white people that don't want the vaccination either because of past experiences with this type of medication. So it's not just isolated by with one group of people. I think that's pretty well the case across the board with all people. I object.
That's not true. That's not true. There's a worse history impacting African Americans than there is impacting white Americans.
Okay, here's the thing. Here I go to. Now you got John Tate. Now they just spent $250,000 to get into the black community to get that vaccination. That's to me. If you don't want a vaccination, don't get the vaccination.
That's right.
Yeah.
And black people sometimes are more independent than they might think than John Tate might think. They're not
John,
all just
they may actually
voting
be smart.
Democrat.
Yeah, they might actually think, John.
Well, wait a minute. He might be thinking to himself, I'm a little bit slow, and I might be an example of the black community.
Yeah,
that might be what he's thinking. I don't know.
Okay, 17% of the black community has gotten the vaccination, and apparently, you're talking a considerable amount have not.
In my mind, I'm thinking maybe they're a little smarter than the rest of us. But because where I'm coming from on the vaccination.
But I just don't see where we have to, drill down now on black people. They don't, we're going to explain to you why you should have this vaccination.
He's just playing that race card again.
Well, the other thing is, you don't think black people watch TV?
What else has he got?
But I mean, really, he almost acts like black people can't think for themselves. They don't watch TV. They have no connection to Facebook or Twitter or anything else that talks about the vaccine. They have no connection to any of that stuff.
Well, if he thinks that, he is missing out on...
Well, that's what he's basically saying is, that we have to get, this is where they are. Well, I think they can figure stuff out just like anybody else can. Yeah. So, I don't know.
This is a whole different phenomenon than the examples that I gave of the history. Right. But the history still does
and
have
that may be
some
part of it. And that may come in and say, Grandma said, hey, watch out what you're doing.
Yeah.
That could be the church group. I'm sure there's people that are hesitant, just like white people, just like Hispanics. They're hesitant of getting the vaccine. And there maybe there's more of it in the black community. I don't know. But the fact is to go in and drill down on that particular group, because that's what they're doing with $250,000 that they've hired their Democratic friend to go in and do.
And Doc, even if if you're correct, or if you're not correct, they might still be just smarter about this vaccine. They might be really concerned about it because some of the stories going on, maybe they're better on social media than the rest of us, and they're not all listening to CNN or something like that, and they're finding out what some of the problems are with these vaccinations. Maybe
are you espousing black superiority? Are you being a racist here?
I think I'm gonna go back.
Yeah, I guess I am. I'm saying maybe they're better at social media. They're finding out the truth better than we are.
Last comment is just, both the vaccine and the mask is both an individual intervention and a community intervention. And, the whole time we've been here, we've been saying, trust the science, trust the guidance of our public health officials. I'm certainly there. I don't disagree with the CDC's recommendation that if you're fully vaccinated, you're safe and can kind of do what you're going to do without a
How
mask.
can you disagree with the CD estimations? They've come down on both sides so many times.
Yeah. Right.
Whether you say yes or no, you're right.
Well, pick something to disagree with.
Yeah,
and go with
that's
that.
right. Yeah. You
I
can't-
mean, I know it's such BS. You listen, it's like, whoa, nobody's thinking here.
My concern is that the guidance didn't also come as forcefully with some sort of metric for when to do certain interventions based on your community's response. And that's a bit frustrating on my end. So while I certainly will support the recommendation of our local health department and our experts that say, in the CDC that says, if you're vaccinated, you're good to go, I don't think that doesn't do enough of a service to communities to provide a full picture of what it means if you're not vaccinated, and what the response should be for the tools that we do have.
You know what that tells me?
He's looking for something to talk about?
No, I'll tell you what. He's looking at this. I'll tell you what. And I know I sometimes reach in. He's a dangerous dude, because I'm going to tell you why. Because he's looking at the unvaccinated as a problem. We have to, as our community, our matrix. We're going to take that matrix and we're going to look into that. Into our specific
That's a good
community.
point. What he was saying, basically, if you're not getting vaccinated, you're not properly educated.
Right. You're
Yeah,
not properly
that-
educated. You're not falling into line. You're not
Yeah,
doing what we
that's
want you
right.
to do or tell you to do. And this is a slippery slope. I don't care what anybody says. That dude is dangerous.
Well, yeah.
He's a dangerous man.
He's dangerous if people listen to him. But hopefully people aren't paying too much attention to him.
Yeah, but I mean that mindset. That mindset.
No, it's a anti-freedom mindset.
Yeah,
You're right
exactly.
in that, Jim. It's definitely the collectivist mentality. It's the group think. We all got to stand in line.
He wanted the
and
CNC to
everybody
come
do the
down
same
with some
thing. We're all
matrix
gonna-
that's going to say you can go
Yeah.
in and go after those unvaccinated people.
I think he just likes to hear himself talk.
Well, he does that too.
Yeah,
That's for
yeah.
sure. I listen to this stuff and break it down, and it's like, oh my God, I can't take it anymore.
Jim listens to what people say. Be careful. Be careful what you say to Jim, because he's listening to you.
He's probably got a camera.
Percentage of city employees that have been vaccinated. I know there's been some resistance in a couple of the departments. Do you have I'd like to see the City Hall and the Common Council back in regular action, and I'm just curious if there's a number for city employees, a percentage of city employees that have been vaccinated, being that they were one of the first ones to get the opportunity.
Donnie K, do you want to
And
share
other-
some of the data by in aggregate and maybe some of the departments?
Sure. Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Alder Peterson, for that question. So right now, within the framework of city personnel, we're at 66% of city personnel are vaccinated for COVID at this time. How do you have by department? Oh, I got it. Yeah, by department, some of the highest departments are our Human Resource Department, the Mayor's Office, the Municipal Courts, City Attorney's Office, the Health Department, Wastewater. Those are some of the higher ones.
He makes a really good point. If he's just saying, if this procedure that we're going through,
You're talking about the alderman making this point? Or the mayor?
He says
Okay,
if
good, the
all
mayor,
of these
okay.
things have been of value, we should have reached a point by now where our city hall can be open, and
You would think so.
Yeah.
They're at the forefront of protecting themselves with a health inspector.
but then he says, so give us the stats.
Right.
What did- how are we doing?
Yeah. Why aren't we opening? Why
Well, if it's if that is a genuinely good and proper thing to do, then everybody in City Hall you would expect would probably be. Okay, well, she said 66%. That's very close to 70%, which is considered to be herd immunity when you hit that level.
No. When you're talking about the herd immunity now, does that include people that have the natural antibodies where they're not going to be affected by the virus anymore?
Yes, it does, but her 66% probably does not include those people. So
All right.
there's a very strong likelihood that they're at 70%.
They're at the 70%
Yeah.
because to say only 3% of the population has the antibodies is I think it's a little bit low.
So,
So the point is,
Well,
it's
they have
it's
to
time
have
for
been,
them to
exposed to it and gone through it.
so they should be able to open up.
I absolutely.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
And the thing that I want them to do, I want them to open up those city council meetings so that we can go face to face with these council members and not be hiding behind screens and buttons and this type of stuff.
Right.
And because I want to see Mercedes up there every week.
Well, and they could still run
not just when she can figure out the buttons.
They could still cover it on Zoom, even if they're having.
Well, they got
even
a
if
whole
they're having the
program.
meeting.
We can cover it on
Let's
Zoom,
start.
but I want the council and the speakers to be able to go and talk to
go to
them.
car 25? Why are we utilizing
yeah,
that?
car
I mean, we got all the
Yeah,
we got
car
all the
25
equipment.
is a good question.
Yeah, we got all the equipment. We were on Zoom on Facebook. Really, a government official on Facebook? I just.
But if they were running it on Zoom, so people would have the option of commenting from home
yeah,
or
no,
down there, but it should be open.
Let's have it. We got so much
and
technology out there.
let's dump those masks too. I think it's time to just come on. I mean, you've got the vaccination. I'm sure Dottie, the boss, does, and probably the other two people in the picture. Does this vaccination work or not? If it works, get rid of the masks. You know.
I think it's a good way to avoid.
You think she looks better with the mask?
No, I'm thinking, they might be concerned about facial recognition.
Yeah. Who's been doing all this stuff?
I'm not going to get sick, and I also don't want to get busted.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Oh boy, City Hall! What a deal! I tell you, man, it's
time to get real.
yeah. Hopefully, yeah, it is. I think that's a really good way to put it. It's time to get real, City Hall.
Yeah, well, that's our recommendation, and hopefully they'll follow our lead, because traditionally they have done that.
We're real.
That's right.
Yeah.
Eddie followed us.
Aren't we the example that the community is following?
Oh boy.
Anyway, that's it for today. Come back and see us next week. It's been a pleasure having you here.